if you'd like. Bruce, are you there and ready?
Thank you. Now I have to restate everything I just stated.
I didn't realize you were talking.
Thanks, everyone. Basically, we'll call the July 19th, 2023 Advisory Committee meeting to order. First order of business is the approval of the May 17th Advisory Committee minutes. Has everyone had the opportunity to review the minutes? Are there any adjustments, changes, or corrections that anyone wishes to have made to the minutes? Hearing and seeing none, I will ask for a motion to approve. Motion by Adam Story. Do I have a second?
I'll second, Kim.
Second by Tim Martinez. Any additional discussion? Hearing none. Not seeing everyone, I will. I believe I can see everyone. Everyone in favor, raise your hand by voting aye. Those opposed? Hearing no opposition, motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much. The first order of old business is the Education Subcommittee update. And I was not able to attend this meeting. So, Sandra, is that yours?
It is, but Karen did a great job at the meeting, and so I'm sure she can tell us.
All right, thank you.
Well, basically what we've been doing is collecting some information from different haulers to kind of see like where there's consistencies or any inconsistencies between materials. I think at the end of that last education subcommittee, that's kind of what was asked, was not only to try to share some, I mean, I've collected a lot of stuff. I can't say that I have something from everyone at this point, that we reached out, we reached out to all private haulers and City of Shively. And then of course, I'm involved for the public works side, but I do have a presentation that shows, because I already did what we talked about at the end of that meeting, was really, I guess, kind of side-by-side looks at some of the materials we've received. And Sandra, you can guide me if I go in a different direction than what you all had kind of anticipated, but if that's all right, I can go ahead and
No, that's
share.
fine. What we were looking at, a lot of the materials are very good.
Mhm.
And if there are more areas of consistency than there are of inconsistency, we have an easier step forward. On the other hand, if the inconsistencies do not contribute massively to the waste stream, then that's another pathway that we can take. Go ahead.
Yes. So, so I'm going to go ahead and share my screen for a little bit of stuff I put together here. Let me know if I miss any chats or anything when I share my screen. I don't see as well. So I looked at materials that were sent to me, as well as I think there's one, and I did a lot of screenshots of little parts, so you'll see. And I think with Republic, I didn't really have any materials, but I just did a little thing on the website that I'm going to share here. So, so basically, like Sandra said, what's great is that a lot of the materials already look really good. And so some of the consistent things that I think we would always want would be sharing images with descriptions. So the glass there is a snippet from Metro's latest little card that we made. The middle one is from Rumpke of the paper. And then of course the waste management or WM has the little check mark thing going right now with the triangle. And so all of them have some kind of description, words, and a real image, not an icon. So I think that that is, as far as what I've received, already consistent and already what showing that we would all agree that that's important for any materials to have. And
Actually, what she just said is true. I can't do icons. My brain doesn't process them, and I need some words. And that's why she just created the joke that she is complying with what we said.
I'm sorry. I
Oh,
I
that was
know
good.
icons can be tricky. Okay, now this was some material from Ecotech, was just a packet. So this again are these just little snippets. And that was on the left. And then on the right, I went to Republic Services website and put in my parents' address because they are ones that could subscribe to any service. And I pretended that I wanted recycling. And the only thing available at that moment, of course, I did not purchase anything, so I don't know what happens after. But in the motions of going through, like you're going to add recycling to your subscription, the only thing it said I could take this acceptable, unacceptable materials and expand it, and this is all that came up. So as far as like room for improvement, or maybe I'm just lacking the knowledge of what gets sent. So this is not, definitely not trying to tell anyone that they're doing anything wrong. It's just the idea that even visually you can see right here by looking at just lists of words, it's not as easy to visually see what is acceptable and not. And it just is prettier to have pictures too. All right, and then the other thing that was consistent on the materials that I had was contact info or website where you can find out more, because a lot of times you don't want everything on one page. You know, it can be a little overwhelming to read, so there's always people that want to learn more. So those are some examples of that. Okay.
Karen,
Yes.
this is Pete. Can you go back to the previous slide?
Yes.
Just a quick question on the bottom left, the highlighted area. Was that highlighted on purpose? Like all items must be clean of food. Is that highlighted in the website?
This was a PDF, almost like a scanned copy of printed materials that was sent to me, and it was already highlighted.
Okay. I was just curious.
And there was more to it in this packet, and probably had what I'm referring to here as far as learning more, but I just gave these, this is just little clips, snips things from flyers that I had. And another one is to highlight the top contaminants. So even on a regular, here's what we want in your recycling, there is a little, you know, maybe a smaller version or a similar part of the, on a different part of the page saying what is the worst stuff. So WM, I only clipped a little example from each one. So WM for no food or liquids. We do have, I can't tell if someone needs to mute or if it's me. But so the no foam or carry out packing materials, and then Rumpke's had a list like don't recycle these things. So so that again seemed like a consistent thing that that would be beneficial is to kind of share, okay, here's a few things that you definitely should keep out of your recycling. And then the Metro materials through Public Works, we have been putting Spanish on everything. So that's just kind of an internal policy that we just want to reach as many people as possible. And so I don't really know if private haulers have versions, if when needed or anything like that, but we have just been trying to put Spanish on all things just to be more inclusive of that. And okay, so this is just some things from reading through materials that I was sent. And these highlights, Pete, are mine. I did that on the snippet and this terrible red circle here. So these are just some things I noticed on the Rumpke plastic. This was listed on a separate thing about unacceptable items, plastic items without a bottleneck, although they have recently added cups and tubs. So I felt like that might have just been sort of left over from before. And then I thought, as far as inconsistency with the MRF, I'll get to the MRF thing, but a solo cup is different. Same with the WM, had a separate sheet of non-acceptable materials, and this was one. Beverage bottles, jugs, and tubes. Didn't really refer to cups, which are accepted by both MRFs. The aerosol cans are accepted by Westrock. And that was the little thing off the Republic Services page. WM has this cup and this was just my own personal thought. It looks like a paper cup because it has a paper sleeve, but it's referring to foam. So that was just my own thought there. But also on their non-accepted list, it includes paper cups. So so that seems to be inconsistent with both MRFs. So there's room for improvement, I think, on some of that. But again, I don't always know where these things come from, since these companies often make materials, for everywhere. So the next thing, this is the flyer, a snippet from our card that we have. And as far as MRF differences on our card versus where our material right now goes to Westrock, the only two things from what I know and have talked to Hillary and Bruce that would be inconsistent on these pictures is this clamshell, plastic clamshell, and the pie pan. So I just thought I'd bring that up because honestly, as Sandra mentioned in the beginning, some of these things we're sort of hoping there's not too much inconsistency going on. That's not that bad, It's not that bad as far as our accepted items list. Now, this is something else I did. I don't know if everybody has ever really paid attention, but I do a MRF survey each year. Sometimes it changes and sometimes it doesn't, but I have Rumpke and Westrock fill out the MRF survey that is modeled after the recycling partnerships one that they give. So this again is screenshots. I have the documents if anyone wants them or doesn't have them as PDFs, but I did side by side here on all the different types just to see. It's kind of interesting. So as far as paper products, basically Westrock takes everything except for hardcover books. They don't really want those in with the sorting. And then there's a few things there on Rumpke not accepted, but it's not too bad. And then of course, if you look at the headings, if you're not familiar with this chart, so there's acceptable, like they're gonna put that out there. Then they don't actually accept it at all. And if it's detrimental to safety or the machines or anything like that, or if it's non-detrimental. And then there's kind of the final one where it's like, well, we don't want it, but if we get it, we'll accept it. This is the glass products, the difference there. Bottles and jars, of course, are basically what we all put on our accepted items list. This is aluminum and steel. So that's where like the aerosol can is listed as acceptable at both places, but was shown on the one website as not acceptable. Then there's plastic products. I don't know how much I mean, it's kind of a lot to look at. So again, I can send these files out to anyone that wants to be able to see them up close and maybe even have it as a guide.
Actually, you've done a lot of work. It's very good.
There's 2 pages of plastic products, which I thought, goodness, that really shows we got a lot of plastic being made in this world. But this is the second one for so a lot, you know, the left-hand column is the accepted column, and there are a lot of things that are acceptable at both on both sides. So I just wrote a few things. This is when I went through this exercise, this is kind of my own questions, and then anyone else can chime in with more questions or more feedback on next steps. But I would like to know how can we ensure that local recycling information provided by all haulers is consistent and accurate? The MRF differences seem to be pretty minor. So how should we handle them on educational materials and resources? And I know Hillary had emailed Pete and me about having a discussion, which I don't know if we ever responded, Hillary, but we did get that. And so yeah, that's a question as far as especially if we make any documents that are really supposed to be, you know, district documents that are for anyone. And then what types of materials should the district provide and how would they be distributed? So as we move forward with, you know, talking about different ways to give the community, it's really all about the whole county being informed in a way that they see maybe a symbol, logo, some kind of something that makes it very clear, like, oh, this is recycling. I'm just being, I guess, the messaging being consistent. So so I that's kind of an open-ended and very broad question, but that and might be something more to think about in the education subcommittee level. But I guess I personally, as the staff that's going to work on this stuff, would like that to be discussed, so I have a little bit more direction.
Hi, Karen. This is Carl, and I apologize. I'm on the road right now, and also I apologize for the whole committee. I've been out for medical reasons for the past several weeks. But just specifically to your point, what about the use of QR codes for consistency and the flexibility of the amount of information, the consistency of information? We could put QR codes on cans and or on other things. And with that, then we could be sure everyone's getting the same information. And we also could, according to how it's done, once it opens up, and since everyone just about has a cell phone and people are used to QR codes, we could make really good use of that and be a way that we could then open into a site that then has tons of information or whatever it is we want to communicate. Just a thought.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. And you're right. A lot of with menus at restaurants and things like that, people are a little more apt to understand what a QR code is. And we're definitely adding them to some materials that we've made. I'm going to go ahead, unless anybody wanted to see any other slides, I was going to go ahead and stop sharing so I can see people. I'm happy to pull that back up if anybody wants to see anything specific. And Carl mentioning QR codes made me think also, I'm on the Partnership for a Green Cities Sustainability Behavior Change Committee, but they have been talking about ways to get messages out and using stickers with QR codes and things like that. And the first campaign or message that they're going to start with, because it's pretty easy to be consistent to everyone, is through the Kentucky Air Education with no idling. So, or not, yeah, not idling. So anyway, I was just thinking that, you know, if we moved to anything like that, that could be another method of getting word out, because that was kind of what I got hung up on is, gosh, if I'm supposed to figure out a QR code or something to make it easy for people to find and vote, I don't know that we're ready for that, because everybody is so different, depending on who's going to see it. I didn't want it to be confusing. So.
That's it, Bruce.
Are you muted again, Bruce? Yes.
I'm sorry, it seems as if you were echoing when I wasn't muted. Thank you very much. And I was wondering, are you going to share those slides with the advisory committee members?
I could do that.
I think you put a lot of work into them and appreciate it. And
Also, the subcommittee needs to, we were going to look at them in our next meeting.
Yeah, and I'll share the materials as well, because like I said, I took a little screenshots just so it made it a nice little presentation, but I don't want to take anything out of context that would confuse anyone. So so I can send the flyers and things I was looking at as well.
how are we going to overcome the differences between the two MERS, Karen? Was that discussed?
You know, we had, that's, in a way, that's what we were going to talk about at our next subcommittee meeting. Some of the differences, now granted, I just looked at these things with you now. Some of the differences are not significant. And what we might do is talk to both MRFs and find out why they've got something there, what their concerns are, what the problems are. In other words, let them tell us how big a deal the inconsistency is.
I think that's a very good approach.
Yeah, because going forward, trying to put educational material out there before we know what we want to put out there is kind of difficult.
Excellent.
Does that sound reasonable to you?
I think it's a perfect decision to move forward and discuss it with the MERS themselves to find out the
Okay.
reasons why. You know, they're the ones that we rely on. So we-
Exactly. And I look at something like one of the things, because I've been involved in the Prospect Library forever, one of the areas where there's a discrepancy is in paperback books. Okay, sometimes there are things you can do depending on what the issue is to make them more acceptable to some kind of sorting process. You know, and that's why I think talking and it is got to be one of the first steps.
Well, I'm sure that Hillary can work her magic and get either Jeff Snyder or someone else from the recycling group to speak to the issues that we face as a company. I would imagine Kim can get to the right person from her corporation to speak to those issues as well.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
All right. Anything else, Andrew, from your subcommittee that you want to say?
No, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Great work. The next is the contract subcommittee, Mr. Adam Story. I think we're going to get up to the point of discussion of a draft RFP. So the floor is yours. And don't do like I do and leave your mute on, Adam.
Glad you reminded me because I was talking with it on. So our subcommittee for the past 4 to 5 meetings, we've been discussing capture rate studies, gathering information about what they consist of, what the goal is, and doing a capture rate study, the different methods to doing capture rate studies. And we had a meeting that the Recycling Coalition spoke with us about their experience in capture rate studies. And taking all that information that we have gathered over those meetings, Pete and Karen have put together, which I think everyone's received a copy of the request for proposal, the draft of the request for proposal, and has had a chance to take a look at that. Just, I think that this proposal or draft encompasses what we've learned in the last 4 meetings, and has the different, I think that this proposal allows for the bidders the opportunity to suggest different methods of obtaining the information we need, and how that information will be analyzed. There were a few, I think, things in the proposal as far as households that we were a little unsure about, but decided just to let's put it out there, see what kind of feedback we get, and then we'll be able to adjust depending on the proposals or the feedback that comes in. Again, I think the draft is very well put together. I think we're open to suggestions that anyone might have to improve that. But again, I think Pete and Karen did a very nice job putting that together.
I do have it if I need to share my screen, and I wanted to, I think I wrote it in the email, but we had our subcommittee meeting and I didn't really get a chance to make any changes to that draft after our discussion, but I do have some notes from that, from the subcommittee meeting. If the same topics come up, I can kind of share some things we've already said. But I guess.
So this is not a final?
No.
You're going to make changes and bring it back? I just
Well,
I think our intention is to show it to the entire committee, look for any potential changes, and then finalize it. Correct me if I'm wrong.
yeah.
I thought all of the components in there were good. I've been to your meetings, and I think you've done a really good job. There's only, the only thing I wish there was is some kind, I'm getting echoing. I wish there was some kind of sentence in there that ends up telling these people how unique our situation is with the different carriers, with the incorporated, with the unincorporated. You've put a sentence like that in other things before, and I just think it would be helpful for them to know that walking into it. In other words, this is not an easy project for them, and they need to know what the biggest problem is to start with. Because when they start picking their 450 households, I would hope they would consider how unique our situation is.
Sandra, I agree. I think it's a good idea to put something in there about Louisville, Jefferson County, so that they understand our community. I think though, and I agree with, we need to put it in there. I think though that when they come back to select that 450 households, there's going to be a communication between us and them to help them in that regard as well.
Oh, I certainly hope
So-
so.
Yeah, so I don't think that I think that it needs to be in there just so that they get an idea of what they're getting into.
Exactly. No,
Uh,
no details,
so-
just an overview.
Yeah. Karen, can you pull it up for
Yeah.
us and maybe we can talk about some of the changes? Because it would be my hope that we can come together on this tonight and get an agreement so that we can move this thing forward and take it to the 109 board next week. So you want to talk about the notes changes that you had, Karen?
Right. I didn't I didn't write anything in here, but I think on the first opening section before desired data, this whole section, the only note that I had was that someone mentioned that it is an individual home study because there was a difference between back of truck, I think, versus individual
Yes, there
homes or
is.
something. Yeah.
Mhm.
And this, I guess, would be where there could be some information like Sandra's mentioning.
Well, actually, it can be, for example, it says current and future residents of Louisville, Jefferson County. I hate to tell you, I don't live in Louisville. I live in the Louisville metro area, but I don't live in Louisville. And the subsequent sentence after that would be the one that we just talked about.
So, Sandra, do you think where it says households in 3 distinct areas within Jefferson County, do you think those 3 areas need to be identified
No,
prior to?
I agree with Pete. I don't think the details are what this needs to do, but I do think they need to understand we don't have a homogeneous situation. They've used sentences like this in other places, and basically all they do is talk about it's not even 2 sentences. I think the last time Pete put it into something.
Might have been our other RFP for
Yeah,
outreach.
it could have. It could have.
I'll look
Mhm.
back. All right, and in my notes, we did eventually talk about this number, the number of households, and Sumeda had done a quick research to find that no need to exceed 1,000 households. And we mentioned maybe a 300, 300, 300, 100. Pete, do you want to explain that?
Yeah, so that would be 3 areas is what we're looking for to do so many in a certain area, and then 150 in, that are not recyclers whatsoever. So that's what we were talking about, and whether or not I think part of the discussion was about how many households had to do with making sure that statistically it was significant and making sure that the margin of error is within an acceptable range for us. Sometimes, for Jefferson County, you're talking about 500 households can get you to a plus or minus 5%. So we was going to look at when we do come in and decide how many households we're going to do to make sure that we're going to get that and getting with University of Louisville so that they can help us with the statistics and making sure that we're getting what we're asking for here. So the question was, how many do we do? And I'll be honest with you, Karen, Sumeda, I know Sumeda said 1,000 doesn't get you any further. Did we decide that we was going to say up to 1,000? I think we did.
I thought we left it off where we were gonna keep it where it was as written, wait and see how the proposals come in, and then if we feel like there's dollars left on the table to increase that amount, then we would potentially increase that amount.
Yeah, I agree, Adam.
And Pete, I think there's also maybe language in there already that says they need to justify their method of study. So it could also be a question that comes up later if we feel like their sample size is very different from the 1,000 or what we're expecting.
True, I agree.
Okay. I was looking through my notes. We'll need we did have a discussion about goal again. You know, it's a little tricky trying to, I guess, solidify what our specific goal is, but it's very much based on the data we receive. And then on the other note I had, if you all remember talking about understanding MRF data, I think you eventually said something about maybe having an audit, some kind of audit. Do you remember that, Pete?
We did. We talked about the different ways that we could verify the data after we do the capture rate study, before and after. So, you know, our overall goal countywide, once we get our education campaign out there, is to take a look at the overall recycling stream to see if it has improved. And part of that is you can do a route study, meaning that you sample everything on a specific route in a specific area, or you can do a MRF study, which would take into account all the residential routes, taking samples from all the different routes all over the city. So that was a way to measure our success, is potentially using a MRF study of the material or a route specific study in certain areas.
Okay, that would be on us to do.
Yes.
I have a question, Karen. A question of Pete. If we do a MRF study, we would have to ensure that what we're auditing is solely waste from Jefferson County and not import waste from outside of the county, correct?
That is absolutely correct. Yeah, so that would be incumbent upon us to make sure that we are selecting the right vehicles and not some that have crossover. So that would be incumbent upon us to make sure that we're not doing that.
It may be a challenge, but it's something we need to talk I guess, in more detail.
Yep.
Okay, there's a note in the chat about referencing members of the committee and being clear on who we're talking about with that. Wasn't sure what it was.
Where was that?
But we can certainly be specific as to who we're talking about. We can find that. The other thing would be these lists. Hopefully, any of our representatives from the MRFs, have you had a chance to look at these categories and how they've listed them?
Hi, Karen. It's Hillary with Rumpke. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Awesome. Okay, so we have taken a look at these lists, and we do have a couple of changes or suggested changes. So on the acceptable, on Appendix A, on the commodity categories, we would recommend including aluminum cups and plastic cups to the list.
Okay.
And then on Appendix B, we would suggest including scrap metal pots and pans. as contaminants. And that is all we saw.
Okay, thank you.
And we didn't have any recommendations for changes. We're fine with the list as it is.
Great. I didn't really have any other notes from the recording of the subcommittee. So at this point, if there's anything else from members that weren't at that meeting that maybe if you've looked over this and have any suggestions or thoughts, we can continue.
Did we find where Jerry was talking about as far as staff? I'm hoping that we can address that tonight.
Sorry, I keep
Don't
rolling.
mind me coming in on this. If you look on page 1 where you start at the top, the Louisville Metro Waste Management District, come down to line 18 where it says vendor will work with WMD and members of the committee.
Oh, I see.
I think it says what committee?
So are you talking about members advisory committee?
Well, that's what I would presume, but that's not what it says.
Okay.
That's why I thought I need to clarify. Are you talking about one of the subcommittees or the advisory committee or what committee?
Yeah, we can add advisory committee. That's not a problem.
Yeah, I have a note for that. Thank you. That's important to refer to that correctly.
Thank you, Jerry.
So we don't really have but really one. We have to consider the appendix, which we can modify that, I'm sure. But then adding I guess the statement about our community and the complexities and our uniqueness of our community. Other than that, we don't really have any substantial changes from the document. Would anybody be comfortable moving forward with this with the promise to make those changes? And obviously, we'll send this out before the 109 board meeting, but just trying to push this along to get it done, not trying to pull anything on anybody. But I'm just hoping that we can get it pushed through.
How much time would it take to make the changes before a vote?
I can, I can make the edits that we've discussed tomorrow.
Are you suggesting doing it tonight, Bruce?
Oh,
I would like to try, if that's our goal, I would like to try to take a vote this evening. Because we have people that have joined us that taken time from their day. We don't want to try to gather everybody up again tomorrow or, another week from today.
I can make a motion that we take a vote based on what we have talked about and the changes that we've talked about, and that those will be submitted to us by tomorrow. And based on the assumption that they will be done as we've requested, we could vote tonight.
I would second that. I feel confident that the changes, I feel like will be sufficient or should be fine. And I don't think they hugely affect the overall document.
I agree.
All right, so I have a motion by Ms. Leonard and a second by Mr. Story. Any other discussion? Hearing none. All those advisory committee members in favor, please state aye and raise your hand.
Aye.
1, 2, 3. Aye, Pat. Those opposed? Seeing none, hearing none, motion carries. So we will get an updated document tomorrow based on the changes that we all agreed upon this evening. And that's the document that will be presented to the 109 board. Pete, when these RFPs come back in, is there going to be a panel interview of all the applicants?
Yeah, well, when we put together put it into the boilerplate, we always have who's gonna review it, and it'll be basically the same thing that we did the last time. It'll be members of the staff here, it'll be somebody from purchasing, and it'll be members of this committee that'll be on that list.
Good, thank you. Well, nice work, Adam. Thank you, Sandra. I know you guys all have put forth a lot of energy, and we appreciate it. Any other comments with the subcommittee? Hearing none, we'll move on to the next order of business. The 109 board update.
I don't really have an update from the last time that the board met. I think it was a pretty quick meeting, and so I don't really have an update.
All right. Fair enough. Thank you, Pete. Is there anyone else in attendance? The meeting, anyone else wishing to be heard on items pertaining to the agenda? Speak now or hold your peace.
Bruce, this is Pete. Just one thing that I wanted to bring up, if anybody was interested in serving on the Host Agreement Committee, prefer somebody that's not necessarily a competitor of the local landfill here. But if anybody's interested in that, doing so, please let us know.
All right, thank you, Pete.
I would like to just say one thing on my presentation. I didn't include any information from Republic's Recycling Simplified website, but I will send that along with materials in my email. I just wanted to clarify that because I know they do have some good information on their website as well. So be looking for that. Thanks.
Do you want to also tell people the training that you're going to be doing this week with the Waterfront Botanical Gardens?
Yes, sorry. I thought what? Yes, I'll be at Waterfront Botanical Gardens tomorrow night along with Laura Veldman from West Rock, and we're doing one of their adult classes about recycling tomorrow evening. And I was told today 16 participants. It's a sold out class.
Wow.
Very good. Thank you.
And we do have a pop-up drop-off this Saturday at Metro Fleet on Newburgh, if anyone has anything to get rid of.
All right, anyone else that has any issues that they want to bring up?
One more thing on the agenda that I emailed, I had a misprint on the next meeting rather than September 19th. It's actually September 20th. So I wanted to make sure nobody got confused, but it will be on a Wednesday.
All right, thank you. Hearing no other comments, and we will move on to announcements. Obviously, the next 109 board meeting is Wednesday, July 26th from 5:30 to 7. And the contract subcommittee meeting will be Tuesday, August 8th from 3 to 4 p.m. And the education subcommittee meeting will be Tuesday, August 8th from 4 to 5 p.m. The next advisory committee meeting will be Wednesday, September 20th from 4:30 to 6 p.m. So if we have no other business to address, I would ask for a motion to adjourn. Motion to adjourn by Mr. Story. Second. Second by Ms. Martinez. Any additional discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Hearing no opposition, motion carries. I want to thank each and every one of you for your efforts and joining us tonight. And it seems like we are making progress, and I'm very pleased with that. I'm sure all of you are. So thank you very much. Have a safe and enjoyable evening.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
See you guys.